Am I the a-hole for canceling on my 35F best friend's 36F birthday party at the last minute? I 35F have 2 children, 5 meters and 3F, and a baby who is only 16 weeks old. My first 2 pregnancies have gone quite smoothly, with a few bumps on the way but not much problems. My third pregnancy was really tough as I got diagnosed with preeclampsia, put to bed rest for 6 weeks, and had an emergency C-section during which both me and the baby almost died. I stayed in the hospital for longer than 2 weeks before I was deemed healthy enough to be released. My husband has been beside me in the delivery room all 3 times and does most of the chores and takes care of the kids while I recover and makes sure I have everything I need. We have saved more than enough money from both our jobs to have the ability to afford to stay at home for as long as is needed. My best friend, we'll call her Ashley, has been my BFF since elementary school. We've never missed each other's birthdays no matter what was going on in our lives or how far apart we were. She also was aware of my troubles. Yesterday was her birthday. In the morning I was feeling below par and I was too tired to get out of bed, so my husband took care of all the kids and helped me shower like he did a 100x before during my pregnancies and postpartum. When it was around 2 p.m., I was feeling a little better but I was still worn out, so I called Ashley. Her birthday party was scheduled at 3 p.m. and I was supposed to arrive at 2:30 p.m. I waited until 2 p.m. because I knew how important her birthday is and I was hoping that I would feel good enough to come over. I told her that I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I won't be able to come to your birthday party because I'm not feeling well. She asked what was wrong, and I told her that I was extremely exhausted and there was no way I can be at her party. I literally heard her sigh angrily and she said, "But what about our promise? I broke my arm while racing and still traveled 1,000 miles for your birthday, but you can't drive 20 miles to see me? If your fat ass can reach the grocery store, then you would come here if you actually cared." That's when I became mad and told her, well, if you had kids then you would understand, and that's when she said fuck you and hung up. That wasn't the entire conversation. You might think, what's so bad about saying if you had kids? Ashley can't get pregnant due to an incident that happened during our younger college days and the topic is very sensitive for her, so me saying that was extremely vile. This morning, I woke up feeling much better and I attempted to contact Ashley so I could apologize, but she wouldn't pick up and ignored all my text messages. My husband said that I shouldn't apologize because if she was a real friend she would have shown concern and worry instead of anger and the attitude of a brat, so she deserved my comeback, but I feel so guilty for bringing up her inability to have kids and I feel like such an asshole for doing so. Am I the a-hole for finally telling my mother-in-law that her mac and cheese tastes terrible? My husband 30 meters and I 28F have been married for 2 years, together for 5 years, and currently 6 months pregnant. We are very excited and blessed because I've had some complications in getting pregnant. I have a very good relationship with my in-laws and if any of us ever had problem, we are able to talk it through. Except for one thing. My mother-in-law has her famous mac and cheese that everyone in her family absolutely loves. I, however, found it disgusting on day 1, but I didn't want to come off as rude and ungrateful, so I pulled through it without saying anything. I told my husband about it and he said that his mother has been making it for decades, perfecting the recipe, and she would be deeply offended if anyone told her anything bad about her mac and cheese, so I should just find the right moment to tell her. He for some reason loves it, so he didn't want to be the one to tell her. Which I totally understand because it is my issue and I had to deal with it. It's been almost 2 years of me pretending. So 2 days ago I've decided to just tell her. It was a family dinner where my husband's parents had invited us over and of course, his mother was making her so-called famous mac and cheese. I almost threw up at the smell and I couldn't bear the thought of eating it, probably because I was pregnant. So at dinner, when I was offered the mac and cheese, I politely declined and said no thank you. My mother-in-law looked at me and asked why? You should eat. Good for the baby. And I just went right out with it, I'm sorry, but I don't like your mac and cheese. Everything else tastes delicious, but this is the one thing I simply cannot eat anymore. She looked so deeply offended and she literally snapped, well, thanks for being honest, and didn't even look or speak to me for the rest of the evening. My husband was on my side and tried to speak to his mother, but all I know is that it didn't work because she has been cold to me ever since. What was wrong with the mac and cheese? Her perfecting the recipe ended up with this result: mac and cheese combined with salmon, kimchi, pineapple, seaweed salad, collard greens, onions, and garlic. I don't have a problem with the greens or onion, but the rest tastes so disgustingly wrong with mac and cheese. However, the reason why I think I might have been an asshole is because, like my husband said, she has been perfecting this recipe for years, her entire family clearly loves it, and I tell her that her perfected and loved mac and cheese is terrible. Am I the a-hole for making my sister cry since I quizzed her on her knowledge because she wants to homeschool her kid? I am going to get it out of the way and say I don't like homeschooling. I think it is almost impossible to do correctly on social and educational development. This is coming from someone that went to a shitty public school. So my sister was talking about homeschooling her kid. She said her and her husband will teach her. My sister and her husband are not the brightest people, much more physically labor people than understanding math. I tried to ask if that was a good idea, but she basically said how hard could it be. So I started quizzing her, and these were not hard questions. For examples, I asked what a verb was, name the planets, and a simple math problem, literally asked her to do division. She could only name a few planets and she gave the definition for an adjective, not a verb. Also just completely wrong with the math. It was kinda sad. I told her the right answer and asked if she can't do it, how will she teach the kid to read or any math? She called me a jerk and left to cry. Her husband is on my ass, but my mom thinks it a blessing. Am I the a-hole? I'm questioning myself. Am I the a-hole for just posting my wife miscarried on my mom's social media after she announced my pregnancy? My wife was pregnant with our first child. We weren't telling anyone yet because it was early. My mom was over at our house and noticed some obvious clues of pregnancy. She asked about it and we were honest. We also asked her to please respect our wishes and not go telling people because it was early in the pregnancy and we wanted time to ourselves to absorb it. The pregnancy was unplanned but welcome. My mom lasted 2 weeks before she started posting about becoming a grandmother. We hadn't told her yet we lost the baby. I was still feeling dead inside when I saw her post, so I just commented that Elise miscarried a week ago. I guess it took about an hour for my mom to see the comment and delete her post. We have been getting condolences, which we don't want, and my mom has been getting crapped on by friends and family for being so insensitive. She is mad at me for not telling her that we had lost her grandchild. I think I was an asshole because I replied that I didn't want her blabbing my family's personal life again. She is crying and my dad says that I have every right to be upset but that I could have been nicer. I'm just so angry right now I don't know how to feel. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for saying my wife will have to quit her job if we get booted from another daycare? My wife and I have a 3-year-old daughter, Alexis. Both of us work and Alexis has attended daycare since she was 1. In the 2 years since, we have been asked to leave 2 programs because my wife is a micromanager. I admit both of us went into the first program not really understanding daycare. I quickly learned that they can't provide personalized care, and after learning from her teachers, I reset my expectations. My wife, however, has a lot of anxiety and worries about her daughter. She hates when she gets even a little upset. She's in therapy and is working on it. First program, my wife would constantly watch the live feed and call the daycare multiple times a day. We had several talks about it and the school talked to us twice. My wife ended up screaming at one of the teachers and then the director. We were terminated immediately. Second daycare was a little better because my wife began therapy. But my wife was still so nervous and had a complaint every single day. These were not important things, small things like she saw another child took a toy from Alexis and she would cry. The teacher would give the toy back to Alexis, but my wife didn't understand why the other child wasn't punished for it. This daycare didn't kick us out but did eventually suggest that this may not be the best program for us. My wife and I decided to pull Alexis out. My wife because of her anxiety, myself because I knew my wife had burned bridges and was becoming one of those moms. We chose a smaller home daycare this time as we couldn't afford another center. The woman who owns it is very nice but also firm. She stands by her boundaries and won't let my wife break any rules, whereas the centers were definitely more accommodating. My wife would take any inch she got. This time, she doesn't get that opportunity. I thought all was well as the owner only speaks to my wife for the most part. Then, I get put in a group text saying my wife has been bombarding the owner with texts every day, despite the owner saying she will text her at lunch when things are settled. She said at this point, she will only be responding at specific times of the day and not looking the rest. The owner then sent several pages of the contract with passages highlighted, reminding us of certain policies my wife had violated. I was pissed. When Alexis went to bed that night, my wife and I talked. I said this was our last option for daycare. The other centers are too expensive and this was the only home daycare in the area that we like. A nanny is not in our budget. My wife made a million excuses, including that it's not her fault she's anxious. I said if we are asked to leave this program too, my wife will be the one quitting her job to watch Alexis, not me. This upset my wife.